I tried to share it. I tried to share it this morning, and I tried to share it yesterday. For some reason, I couldn't.
We're gonna have to do a UAC social media crash course and get everybody sharing the things.
Yeah.
And also, I think it will be just fun to get to know you guys and to do a little. Maybe it'll be a special artist happy hour, like a communications 101 artist happy hour. A little wine, a little hashtagging, a little reposting. I think that's a good combination. So I will schedule that. I'll plan that out because we are so grateful when people do share our events and are able to repost them, because then we're getting the word out there and we get our lovely audience views up and people get to hear the wonderful words that you're about to share with us. So it's always important to do a little press tour before these things.
That's great.
But okay, we are recording this evening, and I would like to say thank you in advance to everyone who has joined us for any one of these talks in the last couple weeks. And I am just incredibly grateful to be able to be in conversation with so many amazing artists in Memphis. And we just have such an array and a beautiful display of various mediums and creative expression here in Memphis. And anytime we get to highlight that, it is so incredible to me. And of course, Carl, as you said, this will be on the internet forever. So I am so grateful to be able to do that and give a platform to artists to be able to talk about their work, especially when it has to do with UAC. So again, thank you everyone who's joining us this evening. We will get started here in a moment or so, just letting everyone log in. But this is the 4th iteration of the Movable Collection Artist Talk series, our final installment of this series with Carl Moore and Carol Buchman. So thank you for joining us, and we'll start in just a moment. Okay, so thank you everyone again. This is being recorded, so if you would like to turn your camera off or have any issues with anything, feel free to, but you will be on the internet again. So thank you for attending tonight's conversation. And I would like to start off with just a little bit of background program information about the Movable Collection. The program was established by UAC to manage the city of Memphis's collection of local art. It's displayed on a rotating basis in a lot of community-centered public spaces here, such as our libraries, our universities, City Hall, and the airport. And so we have 2 images here of some of the work that's currently displayed in the public library branches. We have work in 4 branches and it's expanded to 7. So we're really excited about that. And we have over 68 pieces in the collection. So it's a pretty wide variety of pieces and work. And it's just an amazing display of the talent in the art that we have in Memphis. And so these are the lovely pieces that we have featured this evening: Stranger Fruit by artist Carl E. Moore and Shabbat for Jenny by artist Carol Buchman. And so this evening, I would like to start off with a little quick introduction of both artists, and then I will have you talk about your piece. So Carl, we're gonna start with you. Carl is an artist whose work connects social ideologies about race, stereotypes, belief systems to the perception of colors in our everyday environment. And so with his piece, Stranger Fruit, Carl, could you elaborate a little bit, tell us a little bit about this piece and about you as an artist?
Well, Gabrielle, Stranger Fruit is primarily taken away from Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit. And, the reference there really deals more with the idea of community and the events taking place around our community and basically in the world. And the piece itself is just a metaphor for, if you see the leaves falling, and if you remember Billie Holiday's song, um, the idea of the leaves falling is a reference to all of the things that are taking place. Um, Human beings, as we interact, there are things that are taking place in our society and in our communities that are not always good, but not always bad. And so what I was trying to portray in this particular piece is, the idea of strange fruit or stranger fruit is this person looking up at these series of events and how these things change our community, how they affect our community. And it's kind of giving us the impression that we are the watchers of these things. I mean, I try to always look at the point of view from a human perspective. And that point of view is we all are human. We're not higher or lower than that. We are human beings. So anything that we're interacting with is done by another human person. It's done by another human being. And I always put that philosophy up on or as part of somebody's success. Nobody, you can achieve anything you want because the person who achieved it, they're a human being like you are. They may do amazing things, or because we all have different talents and different skills, but nobody's doing anything that you yourself possibly cannot achieve. So the idea of stranger fruit from a whole different perspective is to look at things that have happened in the Black community and our communities in general in the past is a reference to how we look at these things in the future. So, and these things are always taking place. And life, which is probably going to be part of another question, as we look at life around us, things are constantly changing. We're living a different life every day because we're involved with different things every day. We're experiencing different things every day. So every day is an adventure or something new unless you choose not to make it that. So stranger fruit, the concept behind it is, if I talk literally about the piece itself, this person is looking up at all of these prevailing events that are falling as metaphors of these leaves. And I think Kimberly, I think you asked me a long time ago about the glaring ball on the right side.
Yeah.
To me, it's one of those things, that people have in their garden. I forgot what they're called.
The globe, water, yeah.
Yeah, there is a actual phrase. Jeff Koons did a whole series where he put them in a painting. So I put that in there as a form of a reflection. We tend to have to look at ourselves in the mirror, and while looking at these leaves falling, and which that's kind of representing all of these events taking place. Same time, the ball is there for him to look at himself. So there is this meaning behind it. This is one of those paintings that got repainted so many times. If I could go in and feel the layers of paint, don't ask me why. It's without
You can look at the surface and see that precision. I mean, as we talked about earlier, and what I love, and the more, thank you for sharing that, Carl. And I do remember now us being in conversation. And for context of my presence here with Gabrielle, thank you again for having me as a co-host. It's a pleasure and an honor to be in conversation with all of you. Also, it was a great pleasure to be on the committee for the Movable Collection and the selection committee for that. So in this work, I mean, again, I was always, I was struck by its, how do you say, at once, it felt very glaring. The title is very strong in terms of pointing to, like you explained earlier, the Billie Holiday narrative, but also it's a sense of transcendence now that I recognize even in this conversation that I didn't necessarily even see at first. But as you talk about, as he's looking up into the trees and at this reflection and hearing your humanist, philosophy of how we are reflections of each other and through time, I think that definitely, and in a design aspect, it was the earring and the chain, that too, that was like, is the earring anyway. So I thought that, compositionally, it was a very well, placed bubble in, and it gives also to the personality, and it distinctly let you know that you are looking at a person, I don't know, for some reason, that the figure is male, or even in fact, beyond the Black tone of his face, of his profile, looking up, you do understand that he's also African-American. But Stranger Fruit was interestingly written by a man of Jewish descent. I can't think of his name at the moment, but he wrote that song for Billie Holiday to sing. And so the anguish in those lyrics, I think, still transcend through time, just like this piece embodies a transcendence that I think leads well into maybe Carol. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
it was Abel Meeropol, A-B-E-L.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you.
Very interesting person himself.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So
Abel Meeropol.
Abel Meeropol. Mm-hmm. He adopted the orphan children of Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. Mm-hmm. Later,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
He wrote the poem. He wrote the lyrics to the song.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Carl. So next we have Carol. Carol is a mixed media artist whose work ranges from landscape to portraiture and is marked with a mystical and childlike quality. And so her piece, Shabbat for Jenny, is a 2010 mixed media with elements of her cousin Helen's tablecloth and resin coating on canvas. Carol, could you speak a little bit to this piece and to your practice as an artist?
Sure. So, so this piece Jenny is my grandmother. It's a personal piece about my grandmother and Shabbat, and that her hands over her eyes is something you do when you light the Shabbat candle, and you're kind of bringing the spirit towards you, and you can see kind of a shadow of a figure, and that is like, the word is midrash, but it's kind of a story that you get this extra soul on Shabbat so that you're really filled, you're a really full being. And that's my great grandfather from Poland in there. And one of the few family heirlooms I have of a relative in Poland who painted on velvet. And I just have this vivid memory of that painting. But the painting was at a time when I was really exploring my Jewish culture, roots, and just having almost a conversation with my ancestors. My grandmother, who moved from Berlin to New York City, left her family behind, and almost all of them were killed in the Holocaust. And I began to feel like I owed them a conversation to explore my Judaism a little bit more, to learn about it, and to reference it in my work. And I don't have children myself, and I kind of felt like, if for so many generations, despite so much persecution in Poland, where they were from, and Germany, that they chose to stay Jewish, that the least I could do was sort of go on my, learn it, learn more, and just kind of declare that I kind of come out of the closet, so to speak, in my work about that part of myself. So, and I have vivid memories of her and visiting her in Flatbush in Brooklyn. So it's a sentimental piece, but I'm thrilled that the collection has it because I love that it's public.
I love that too, because as you said that you had to come out of the closet a little bit with showing that part of you within your art. I think as we were talking a little bit before about how Judaism is secular and non-secular, to be Jewish affects the whole self. And so any child in the library seeing this piece and seeing these elements and able to reflect on that and understand that, I think we were saying that a lot of artists who tend to use religious iconography in paintings or in their artwork, they become a religious artist. And so for
exactly.
you,
and I didn't want to be labeled as such at all, but I felt like to explore my culture and some of the stories, rituals, and blessings, it's so rich, and why should I stay away from that? So much richness there, and but somehow I have to walk that line of not being labeled.
Right.
Because for me, it's not religious. It's just part of the experience of who I am.
Exactly.
It's a wonderful.
And the other thing is, just one last thing about this piece, is I'm always struck how that's just a great grandfather. I don't know if you can see, but it's very old world. He has the curls and the beard, and it just wasn't all that many generations ago. But my grandparents on both sides were immigrants, and it's just, I'm the break with that old world. My mother even was born in Poland, so I'm sort of the break with that old world generation.
Oh,
wow. It's not really very far back. So
thank
still
you.
Carrying the traditions. Yeah, thank you for that
So
story.
we learned so far that both of you are not originally from the Memphis area, but I think our next question talks about how the city of Memphis has influenced your work. I know that for Carol, Memphis definitely helped to spark a conversation, I think, within you about your artwork. And so we will talk a little bit about that in a moment, or we have touched on it a little, but we'll start, Carl, with you. We have two pieces: A Storm Is Coming and A Shower and Rubber Bullets. And so I just chose these pieces, well, mainly from my non-professional artistic side, because I saw the Nike symbol. And so it just made me really think about Memphis and Nike and just general themes here in Memphis. And so I wanted to use those pieces, but I don't know if these lend to your Memphis inspiration, but I know that you attended school here. And so I want to say that Memphis has had an influence on you for sure.
Yeah, I moved to Memphis actually to go to college. I went to the Chicago Institute of Art for a summer semester, and they introduced that summer semester to get students interested in the Chicago Institute of Art, and I loved it. Did not like Chicago at the time.
Nicole, up there for you.
It was the early 80s, and things were, I don't know, it was an interesting city. I just didn't like, I love the city. I don't think I was that crazy about the people at that time. And I learned the hard way of getting on a Chicago bus with a full portfolio.
Oh my God. Where are you originally from?
It wasn't a pretty thing. I'm originally from Mississippi, Canton, Mississippi.
Okay.
And I moved here because it was closer. And, my first years in Memphis, Memphis ended up being my second home because I moved from Canton, Mississippi, straight here, via coming through Chicago. And Memphis was interesting. I've spent my artistic career here, but I've had the opportunity to show my work outside of Memphis. But I think for artists, Memphis is a wonderful place. It's centralized. It's the shipping hub, moving work in and out, and it's affordable. And I think that's the biggest plus from friends and people I know. You can live here. You have to have a job, but you can live here comfortably and be an artist, versus someplace, like Chicago or New York where it's really expensive. Had friends to move to Atlanta, so it's fairly expensive there. So Memphis has influenced my life, my art career, and my adult life. I moved here at 17, and so I've been here since then. Went to school, graduated, went back to school, got my master's, and I've always been a practicing artist and a practicing designer. So the influence that Memphis has on my work has been, I like to consider my work reality-based, regardless of what my style is. I try to capture life as it is. I try to capture the Black community specifically as it is. And for me, Memphis is a good reference. I take a lot of pictures, and I could be driving down the street and see something and my cell phone would pop out the window real quick or from the window and take a picture, even when I'm walking.
But I noticed all the pictures on your website that you have, the photos are all in black and white. So as a photographer, that really intrigued me that you have posted these images in black and white, and your actual work is so colorful. And so that
I want you to focus on the format of the photos. I want you to focus on the contrast and the images of the photos. Those are just like less than 1% of the photos I take. And I take a lot of photos for reference material. My cloud has roughly 16,000 photos on it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
That's reference material, that's just a little bit of everything. And so the influence Memphis has is Memphis itself. It's almost like going to any city.
Such a wonderful way to put this. Yes.
I get people to pose for me. My biggest posing person is my wife. She poses for everything. And she's influenced in a whole lot of my work, just structurally.
Yeah.
If I need to know how an arm goes up with the hands pointed, she's like,
shout out to wife.
I shoot the picture, I move it into Photoshop, cut her hand out, and I end up grading it onto canvas. So my work is a process. But to answer the question, Memphis is a great influence, and the Memphis day-to-day life influence I get helps me visualize when I go to other cities and see life there. It's a good reference to back and forth. And at the end of the day, you find out people are the same wherever you go, but everybody does something different and something interesting. So it's not uncommon for me to shoot something here in Memphis, walking down the street or walking past something, because I can see it visually for my work as either a background element, a foreground element, or just an element in general to give me an idea to something else.
And so next we have images from you, Carol. And so I would like to talk a bit about Memphis's influence in your work, specifically this Midrash series.
Sure. So, here I am, surrounded by the Bible Belt, and even there's the buckle of the Bible Belt. And I moved here from Boston, where I'd gone to art school and stayed for 15 years, but I'm from New York. And when I came to Memphis, it was the whole church thing. The Bible Belt was kind of a culture shock. And I began to teach at an Episcopal school. I married someone who grew up Catholic, is probably more of a Buddhist. And I like to say in this picture, I was a lonely Jew.
Wow.
I felt surrounded by all this Christianity, and I wasn't, just hearing the talk and from home. So here I am in my New York City shirt. I grew up in Long Island, so there's a Long Island train schedule.
Yeah.
Statue of Liberty is holding the joys of Yiddish. That's I have a little star there, and that's something called a hamsa, which is a little symbol. And I'm just kind of overwhelmed from this culture. And honestly, when I moved here, I was painting landscapes. I was painting car portraits. I was not painting anything that had to do with my Jewishness, and I'd been painting for quite a while already. So Memphis, that sense of cultural isolation and kind of longing for a community that I was familiar with, and I think really wanting to declare my identity and not just be subsumed. Basically not just assimilate into the dominant culture is what led me to push me in the direction of looking at my Jewishness for inspiration, and just as, like I've said, is sort of a declaration of identity. And I began to look at other artists, and the most visible example of what I was looking for was Leonard Cohen, and his referencing in so many of his songs, his Jewishness without, and in a contemporary way, without being labeled, or, I think some people probably didn't even realize that he was doing that. But so he was a real inspiration for me, that I could reference things.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? In both,
Sure.
What the year were these done while you were in New York, or when you were?
No, I would have had no interest. I never stepped foot in a church in New York.
Yeah,
And
right.
None of my friends were religious. A lot of my friends were. Some of them weren't, and none of them were religious. And here, the first thing you get asked is, "What church do you go to?"
Yeah.
And so I moved to Memphis in '93, and I think it took a while, maybe 2000, and maybe 10 years after that. Maybe this piece was from 2000. I'm not sure, and it's big. It's 48 inches square, but it was definitely one of the earlier pieces from this series.
A city like New Orleans, it's kind of easy to not New Orleans, I apologize, New York City, to blend into, and it's what they call the melting pot, Kate.
Right,
For
absolutely.
all different cultures and religions, and coming to a city in the South, being in the South, the Bible Belt is considered, it sort of.
And I'm holding a bagel.
And holding a bagel and the Statue of Liberty, because
that's right. And the Statue of Liberty is, my parents, my grandparents were relate so much to the immigrant experience. And the cat is sort of my witness and friend that appears in a lot of my work.
Do you actually in real life, or is this only in the work?
Oh no, in real life too.
And okay, I was just wondering because I also have a kitty. But something I think is a great strength with regards to the Movable Collection, and Carl, with your work as well. I mean, reflecting a city and urban environment as what the Urban Art Commission is, what we, is embodies in its work, and then definitely intentional in the Movable Collection as it belongs to the city. So it's only right that this narrative and the story that you guys, you all share.
I would say,
great context.
That when I first moved here, I was a little scared of churches. They,
There's a lot of them, and it's
giant crosses is scary to me. And over time, I've gotten much more used to Christian iconography and just and I've learned more teaching at an Episcopal school. I feel more comfortable in churches now and just than I did. I guess I was sheltered.
No, it's different fine. Here. I think I mentioned as we were talking and putting this together that my mom is also from the East Coast, and so I was raised. Part of my family is Muslim and part of my family is Catholic, and so I was actually raised not within the church here in the Bible Belt. So getting asked that question growing up here, I would make up a church so that people would not look at me as different or make me feel like, oh, you don't go to a church, or you're not you're not going to Sunday school or vacation Bible school or any of those things. And so just this piece really resonated with me. And I just thought that it was funny, but also I feel that isolation that you speak to of being here and not quite sure where to put your foot in which church or what religious aspect, and so I think that this is a very interesting piece, and it again really captures those feelings that people can feel in the South, because even I think Bellevue is the one that has the
yes, that's each.
That's I've seen those, and going up and down 55, being from Mississippi, if I could chime in, I mean, I think, I grew up in a strong Christian background, and that I think has been with me as I've moved around the world. So seeing the swirling belt in New York City and all the symbolism, but my spiritual practice has evolved over the years, and definitely picking up from different places in which I live in the world.
Right.
Coming from South Africa to Memphis was incredibly poignant in my journey, not only my professional journey and my career, but also a spiritual journey. And it's something that I think, Carl, you allude to in terms of your experiences with other human beings, like that very much knowing that we are both reflections of each other, but as in, in art and in life. But something I wanted to also, and I want to say it could be, to maybe bring it to Carl and Martin Luther King. How does this make sense? But I know that in Memphis, we live in the shadow of Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And, and I think that also adds to the weight in which, but the weight in which Christianity and the churches and symbolism, and have always been strong foundations in any Black community anywhere in the country, right? And so, Carl, I guess that's the kind of segue into what your work is, because in terms of an activist spirit, an image, knowing the power of images and, purpose and making that point, I think very much stands out in your work. Even when I first got here, the Four Freedoms Project that you were a part of. So And I know I thought just now I forgot that Memphis does have its own Statue of Liberty, and it also holds a cross. Where?
It's over Winchester Road.
Oh, I've seen that.
I've seen that. Yeah.
So just every time you feel a little homesick, there is a Statue of Liberty here.
And she's got a cross. How cool. Anyway, that's
But I think our next question is what inspired you to become an artist? But I'd like to kind of tie that one in with our other question about the themes and elements and influences that can be seen in your work, so that we can kind of make sure that we have some space for questions at the end. So I'm going to start again with you, Carl. We have your piece, Angry Men, and if you could talk a bit about what inspired you as an artist and some of the themes that are reoccurring in your work.
I'll talk about Angry Man and the previous two. Um, I created these pieces during my residency across town, and I had developed a set theme I wanted to work with. My work deals with people. It deals with the Black community. It deals with interaction. It deals with everyday life. It deals with how we not only react with each other, but how we react to our surroundings. So my themes come from everyday life. And I remember with this piece, uh, driving down, I don't want to say the area, but I was driving through the city and I just saw these guys kind of tussling, and they weren't really, I don't think there was any intent to do any uh, permanent damage to each other. It was more just an argument that turned into a tussle. And it was late one evening. It was like 8 o'clock. And so there was a dim, sunlight, and the yellow sign had just come on. So it was the brightest thing in the area. And so this lends itself to a body of work that's relevant to the previous pieces. Um, the previous pieces basically are dealing with 2020.
Yeah.
And so I pulled that theme in part of that body of work. The residency involved 20 paintings that were 48 by 48. And I got through 6 of them, and the pandemic kind of just took over, just trying to move between working from home, work, and moving to the studio became, it became like a task, which was cool. But some days it was like working half a day at home while working, and then choosing to work the other half at the residency studio. And once I logged out at work, I was still there. So I worked on my paintings, and then masking up, gloving up, and then driving back home, getting home and desanitizing.
Right, and still being unsure of everything that was going on. The mental stress.
And part of my thing was not, I was trying to make sure I wasn't contributing to the situation.
Indeed.
In Crosstown, he did eventually open back up with people who's supposed to be there. And so the work itself still, I still was able to identify with the theme I was working with. Now, when 2020 happened, I was already kind of involved into my set theme of work, but it did take a turn. A Storm is Coming was an original sketch. I made some modifications to it to reference what was taking place. And the idea that a storm is coming it references years, not only 2020.
It feels like Katrina is embodied in this piece. I wanted to ask what year these were from. I'm sorry to interrupt, but.
No, both of these are from last year. A Shower and Bullets are last year and this year. And there was a previous piece I should have put in, Fire and Protest. But the idea I wanted to reflect in A Storm is Coming is really past tense. It references the last 20 years. A Storm is Coming is very much reflective of the systematic violence that's been taking place 20 years before that. And let's be real about it, the idea that Rodney King was the first one that was caught on tape.
Yes.
In 1994 or 1992. I sketched it the day afterward, and it was so interesting that one of my coworkers saw me sketching it, and he was like, "You can't do that." And I was like, "Why?" And he didn't have an answer. But I never want to take anything or an incident and do it the next day, because I don't want it to become, I'm capitalizing on an event.
That's so important.
I don't want to sensationalize it. And it took me 15 years to actually do the Rodney King piece.
Wow.
Unfortunately,
those.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say,
I want to bring that back. I think that's a nice way to bring us back to angry men, because that's what,
yeah,
I mean, that
yeah.
experience and you carried that for all those
Well,
years.
yeah,
For 15 years. Thank
well,
you
I
for,
sketched on it for years
yeah.
and years and years while doing
It
other
feels
pieces.
that.
I pulled the sketch out and I was like, it's time to do this piece.
Wow.
And the odd thing is, the very year that I finished it was the very year Rodney King died in his own swimming pool, drowned in his own swimming pool.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
so, you know, so angry men has more, it acts more of a metaphor for these men, because
Yeah.
I like to ask questions. I want the viewer to ask the question, why are these men angry? Are they angry about their current situation? Are they angry about what's taking place in our community?
Now.
And, you know, and sometimes that anger is placed upon the people who are around you. So, you know, angry man, it can be reflective of so much, but it lends itself to a body of work that deals with things that are taking place in the Black community. And so that's where that body of work came from. And it moved through all 6 paintings and now other paintings I'm currently working on, as well as a commission piece. So.
Well, what a wonderful process. And also let's go, congratulations on the Crosstown year-long fellowship that you were a part of. So
right, during the
pandemic. So we appreciate processing through that, and I can only imagine. So but
yeah, and I definitely, I think I know, I mean, I've read and I know you as an artist, I know that you paint Black people and that you use the color Black because that's, you know, what our color association has become for, you know, representation. And I think specifically this piece, though, it could appear to be any men of any race, culture, anywhere, so being true, angry, being upset. And so I'm thinking it kind of makes me think about the unrest in any situation, in any country right now. And there's so much political unrest and all over the world right now. So I think that this piece really, it speaks to all men. Honestly, I think there's a lot of anger in the male community, in the patriarchy, and I definitely I see this taking place in Israel. I see this taking place in Afghanistan. I see this taking
Egypt,
place
Africa,
here in Memphis, Tennessee. So I just thought that was just something I wanted to talk about and say, just because it does seem to transcend race, and transcends race and takes us into humanity of a lot of people are angry about a lot of different things going on globally right now. So
that's a great point, Gabrielle. And just to that point, I mean, something I'm even noticing now in the title, Angry Men, it doesn't say angry Black men. Okay. Thank you, Carl. So sorry, you know, it doesn't say that. I mean, and these are cliches that become attached to what we understand is that historical trauma of carrying the weight of historical trauma, whether you're an angry Black woman or an angry Black man. But you intentionally, I think thoughtfully, and as you stated it, opened it up for any man, because we were all very angry at that time. So wonderful expression. Yeah. Great point.
Thank you. And Carol, we have 2 portraits from you, self-portraits. Fanny and Friends self-portrait at 50, and Who Wipes Sleep from My Eyes and Slumber from My Eyelids by Carol Buchman. And so these pieces speak a little bit more personally to you. Would you like to talk about what inspired you to become an artist, and as you've taken this journey, the themes that are present in your work?
So this piece, if you, I don't know, I guess you can't zoom in, but so first of all, my real name is Fanny, and and it was after a grandma that I never met, but I changed it when I was little because it was rough.
Fanny, imagine what kind of job.
Right, Fanny. Anyways, I was a child artist. I've been an artist since I could hold a pencil. And so these are my childhood drawings. And there's a lot of horses and cats and pretty girls and romance. And then these are some of my adult doodles. And some of these childlike drawings I still do, and they're still very much a part of my work. And it's hard to see here, but I have a little Star of David on, and it's kind of having a conversation with myself at 50 as myself as a child artist, and then as an adult. And these childlike doodles and drawings, they were all over my notebooks from childhood to adulthood. And then some years ago, I started to work with them in my art as an adult, and either the actual childlike drawings or my adult doodles. So one of the pieces that you have coming up is a nice combination of some of the Jewish
Put
themes.
that one on the screen since we're skipping.
Yeah, and this, you know, it's a little hard to see, but my kooky little animals and cars and people, they're showing up.
And these pieces are behind you. This Welcome the
Yeah.
Stranger piece is very large.
There's my cats, and I think with me, what I'm trying to, maybe it's kind of like a piece of sugar with the heavy ideas. And this piece with the Statue of Liberty toppling was during the Trump administration, and there's a little horse standing there with a microphone. He looks like a little disco horse, and he is reciting the Emma Lazarus poem that's on the Statue of Liberty about bring me, you're hungry and you're tired and you're poor. And I think of the kooky kind of freaky animals, just like all the immigrants coming in, going out, and just with their own, their own identity. It kind of makes sense more like a poem than like it means this and it means that. It's but they're wandering and wondering, they're wandering, and it's not very stable. That welcome is toppling.
Yeah.
And in this piece, again, I've got my cats, and I call this piece Bedtime Protectors. And protectors is a term from Buddhism, which I'm interested in spiritually and in meditation. And there's a little Buddha there. But there's also a menorah from my grandmother, and there's some little dolls that I got in Poland a few years ago on a trip to see where my family, was slaughtered, basically. But there's a Jewish prayer about kind of evoking angels as you go to sleep, evoking 4 angels, Gabriel, Michael, I forget the others. And it's like a nursery rhyme, children type of thing. It's really lovely. And so my cats are my little angel protectors. So that's, and both pieces have collage. I love to use collage.
I really like how you incorporate so many elements into your work that correspond with you specifically. I really love hearing the stories about where certain elements are coming from. I think.
Well, there's a lot of, I guess there's a lot of autobiography in my work. And I often look at paintings today and I feel like there's nobody there.
Ah,
And
interesting.
my paintings are perhaps a little bit more commercially risky because I'm so there. And
You're so there. You're all there.
I'm
You are
all
fully present. The artist is present.
but I have found that even really personal pieces can resonate with people.
With the masses. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the way in which you use or how you use symbolism and like small tchotchkes, things that, I mean, and things, you know, people's pets. I mean, I find some familiarity with the way I put things next to my desk, you know, unknowingly, a ninja statue that, you know, a little thing that my cousin gave me, you know, or a pen or something that my grandmother, a gift, but we keep them close to us as a way of protection. Of our a totem.
Yeah. And I think that animals for me have huge symbolism, like I said, is witness, comforter, friend, you know, all these alter ego, all these things.
Shadows,
I've got two. And it's also just it's also just kind of sharing, I think sleep.
The importance of that.
It's just it's very intimate.
It certainly is.
Tender.
It's when you're most vulnerable as well, too, when you're sleeping.
Yeah. Wow.
He's like, this started from a little doodle drawing that was about this big, and then it wanted to be big. And this one is actually pretty big, but it's hard to see the details.
But again, for anyone who does want to see more detail, both of them have amazing websites with very detailed photographs of their images. And so unfortunately, we can't zoom in on the slides presentation, but yeah, we will definitely drop the links to your website within the chat. And so thank you for combining those two questions. I do want to show quickly the other two reference images that we had from Carl for the question on elements and themes. And so Mr. and Mrs. Black in America and Man with Red Stool, I think are also two provoking images that, again, were these two images made during your Crosstown residency as well?
Actually, they were made in 2020, 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Mr. and Mrs. Black America was either late last year or this year. They all were part of the same body of work, basically, but smaller. And Mr. and Mrs. Black America is a reference to last year. And Man with the Red Stool both incorporate the idea of people. And, you know, I sometimes like to take, you know, people doing mundane things, but I think whatever you're doing is interesting. You know, it's just the act of participating in that particular action. So Mr. and Mrs. America, Mr. and Mrs. Black America is more political. It has a lot more to do with the events that took place last year, along with just the symbolic icon of Black America itself. And, you know, giving Mr. and Mrs. Black America identity. These two people who operate in the world are part of a community that's that's part of how we live and what we're doing. And Man with the Red Stool is basically a symbolic image. It's a simple act of a man carrying a stool. And I'm more caught by, you know, this is more artistic pieces. I'm caught by the angles. I'm caught by just the act of carrying a stool. And the reference that I used was me. My wife took a picture of me carrying a stool in the house. So all of these are just activities. That one is more activity based. And I'm always concerned about what we do, how we do it, how people live, how people function. And a lot of things are played into that. And again, like I said, Mr. and Mrs. Black America is symbolic of, they're like, to me, the symbolicness of our community, of the Black community in general.
Yeah.
People who live in this world, who function in this world, who produce in this world. So both of these pieces are very symbolic of how I work.
I think when you were speaking about Man with the Red Stool, it just made me think about the series that I wrote, that I talked about a little earlier before the talk started with Carol, about her series At the Table, with a bunch of characters that she's sketched out and just watched. And so as you were talking about someone doing a simple act of something, and you're just creating it, showing it at its base, and showing the forms and the shapes of the way people are living life, just, you know, participating in life participants. And so I should have included one of those images. I know, Carol, you didn't send any of that series over to me, but I probably should have just threw it in here, because you know, I could have did that. I really,
Okay.
I just enjoy that series. So yes, of course, please visit Carol and Carl's websites. And I joked with you, Carl, I think I did a very good job of not confusing Carol and Carl throughout this entire talk. So I feel very good about that. Yes, and I've just kept on saying that this week, of Carl and Carol. So I, again, appreciate you guys so much. And I want to finish with this final question this evening from us, and then hopefully we'll have a few minutes for questions from the audience if anyone has anything that they'd like to share or ask out. But our final question this evening, that's very important to me, is what is your why behind wanting your work shared in community-centered public spaces? Because both of you are in the public library community, and also generally have had your work shown in several community-centered public spaces. And I think that both of your narratives and the themes of your work are very important to the community itself, and lend to a lot of thinking conversations. And so I wanted to know what your why behind having your work shown in these very public spaces is.
Carol, you want to go first?
Well, you know, I'm an educator. I've been an educator for a long time, but I think it's kind of a natural wanting to share, to explain,
to tell your story as an artist. I mean,
tell a story, and it's more sort of you know, I do have pieces that get in, a lot of pieces that are in people's private collections, and I always feel like they're sort of I prefer actually in public places. So
they definitely lend themselves well to the collection in terms of being a storyteller and the narrative qualities. How fitting that you're in the Movable Library collection.
Right. And I love being in the library collection.
Yes, at Hollywood Library, if you would like to go see Carol's piece in person.
Hollywood Library.
Yes, at the Hollywood branch. And Carl Moore's, you can find his at the Levi branch of Memphis Public Library. So, I mean, both of you, murals and Carl, that was that word combined. It came out as Marl. But Carl and your murals is something I think this question also may lend itself to. So please tell us, how does it make you feel?
I think, you know, art in public spaces basically to allow people to see art. I mean, I think it's simple as that, because I'm just saying, people, you know, you live in a world that everybody's not an artist, but people do appreciate color. They do appreciate themes. They do appreciate ideas. And I tend to look at things from the point of view that, you know, we're functioning in our community, in our environment. So why not, when somebody walk in, they get to see something different. They get to see a different idea. They get to see a different statement. They get to, it's almost like an experience.
Oh my
You get to
gosh.
experience something different.
That's so powerful.
People are around art every day, but we become so ingrained in our everyday lives, in our everyday movement. You know, you go down a potato chip aisle at a grocery store, you know, look at all the bags.
Oh, those bags. It's
all
my favorite aisle, by the way.
You're bombarded with art, but you don't see it because that art is
With the
trying to get you to buy something. Trying to just attract you to this product. But for an artist to show their art, it's allowing people, you know, I always say when the art leaves your studio, either somebody buys it, it goes somewhere, it's not yours anymore. It's like releasing your children into the wild. So, you know, you're releasing children. Yeah, well, you're releasing children into the wild that won't act up. You know, they're there for a good reason.
Yeah.
They're there to teach, because a lot of art is didactic. It's a teaching tool.
I can agree more with
your
that.
art is there as an experience. So I think the importance to have your art seen by the public, you know, we know when I was teaching, one of the things I told my students, I was teaching college and I was teaching art, and I said, here's the thing, let me ingrain in you. You don't want to wake up one morning and your studio is full of your own art.
Ooh.
Release it into the world so people can talk about it, have conversations about it. Once it's gone, it's not yours, and you can't control what they say about it anymore.
Absolutely.
And I also tell them that once your art leaves your studio, 98% of the time it's being seen and in the company of other people, not you anymore.
Always.
You're going to go to an exhibition and stand there all day and night. You know, people are going to conclude what they want. So art is a teaching tool. It's an exposing tool. And that's why it's important for the public to see it.
Yes. And what a treasure. I mean, thank you. Yeah, for a wonderful way to, I guess, conclude and open it up for questions for people that are here. Thank you, Carl and Carol. So
both teachers, I didn't even realize that both of you were arts educators. And what a wonderful way to commemorate yourself is by being in a public library as an educator. So,
you know, do you want to?
But we will definitely, we'll open it up now to questions from the audience. If anyone has anything, feel free to unmute yourself or place the question in the chat and I can ask it for you if you're feeling a little shy. But also, thank you for joining us. We are at 6:30. And so I want to again say thank you so much to the artists this evening and to everyone who has been a part of this series. We couldn't have done it without you.
Thank you. And if I could say, go ahead.
I want to ask one thing, because I have seen Carol's work since about 2010 when I saw her first exhibit that had the painting of the Shabbat. And I was really impressed with it. But I've always been curious. You said you came here in 93. So you must have been young, 20s, late 20s maybe, or somewhere in there, but.
Older.
Don't even.
I'm older than I look.
What your work was, some of your, I've never seen, I don't think, any of your work before 2010 or before you came here. What is there a big difference in the work you did then and what you're doing now? And what
well, I mean, I did, you know, I showed my work in Boston and where I went to art school. And like I said, I did a lot of landscapes and some, I did portraits of cars. And they're really funny, and I still do them from time to time. They're great big, I don't particularly like cars, but I like to paint them. And they're this great big kind of expressionist
I think I
art, and I guess mostly landscapes. But they were narrative landscapes. They were always storytelling landscapes. So and I did paintings from travels. But anyways.
And Carl,
And I came here, I was, let's see, well, I'm older than I was in my
Don't
early
worry, its age is not even a fact.
92.
No need to share this.
and Carl, I wanted to say, because all the ones that you showed, and I've never seen any of your things in exhibit. Haven't been to the library in at least 2 years, and not the Levi Library anyway. It would be the Randolph Library over here. But what sort of work? These are recent, fairly recent, 20 and 21. You said, I think, for all of.
Yes.
But what were you doing before? Have they always been people?
They've always been people, but my work is always evolving. I try to, to sound really, so I can keep it very humble. Every painting I try to make it better than the last. Every piece of work I work on, I try to make it better. So the last 25 years is kind of the work that I'm doing now, but it's evolved in the last 25 years. I've always did people to a certain extent. I've always dealt with social content, but it has changed in the last 25 years. How I handle my paint, my subject matter. And the ironic part is the work that you see now is, I'm trying to make this quick because I know we're running out of time. I took a hiatus when my daughter was very young, about 5 years, to reinvent myself, because in college I was a super realist. I was that person who painted every single dot, every single hair, and I got tired of it. So I took a 5-year hiatus, and my daughter was living with me on and off, and she was little, and I went through this reinventing myself. So the last 25 years have been social imagery, but it has evolved from what it was 25 years ago. It's evolved from what it was 15 years ago. It's constantly evolving. And for me, my little personal thing is I'm always trying to make it better. And I guess for Kimberly, I'm always trying to make the line cleaner, the colors
The precision.
more solid, more, I'm just always trying to see, can I get better?
Well, they're very clean line, but I'd like to see some of the earlier
Me too. I was just thinking the same thing. Thank you. What is your name? Hi.
Carol, my name's Carol.
Hi. Nice to meet you. I was thinking the same thing. I would love to see those realist paintings or drawings one day, Carl. So
Yeah, only person who's ever seen those is my wife. She loves them.
Oh, well, I won't. Okay, so
They're
unless, no pressure.
They're stuck in a portfolio.
But I mean, to hear you talk about that, I mean, the level of mastery, I also think about Kerry James Marshall. I'd be remiss if I didn't drop, his, another artist who I, greatly adored into this conversation. And as we conclude with Gabrielle, I want to say hello to Brett Hanover here, who's instrumental in establishing the Movable Collection and his hard work here at Urban Art Commission. And invite, and Wendy Young, who's also here. Hi, Wendy. And
everyone from the
UAC. Shout out to the UAC. And shout out to, I'd also be remiss if we didn't acknowledge our ancestors and our guides that are with us here and near and far, the indigenous inhabitants of the land that we occupy and enjoy here in Memphis. So thank you for having me, Urban Art Commission, and Gabrielle and Carl and Carol. And we'll see you on the internet in about 5 years. We'll see you later on the internet.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Have a great evening.
Forever.
Forever. Forever. Have a great evening. Forever.